Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining. On behalf of the G3G and the UKI SUG, we'd like to obviously welcome you to our webinar this morning. The topic's about uncovering the value of S/4HANA, especially using the SAP Signavio Process Insights tool. So very quick agenda. We're going to do a quick introduction for those of you that are not familiar with Will or myself, and also a little bit about G3G. Then I'll take a quick moment to discuss our S/4HANA discovery process that we do through G3G. Then I'm going to pass you over to Will, who's going to actually get to the in-depth scenarios within SAP Signavio itself. And we've got a very quick look at the SAP Analytics Cloud add-on as well, which we think is really beneficial through this process. Then Will's going to actually do a demo, so fingers crossed that all goes well. And then it's back over to me to just do a bit of a summary, and we'll have a look at any questions that have popped up as we've gone along. So a quick introduction. So I'm Nick Wilding, a solution architect based in the UK, and you'll be speaking to Will shortly. He's another one of the solution architects based in South Africa, and we're both part of the global advisory team here at G3G. Both have far too many years under the belt with SAP, so we're pleased to be able to bring some value and some insight into these engagements and processes going forward. Both of us are really focused on driving business improvements and making the most out of the SAP investment that all the organisations using SAP currently run. Little bit about G3G. So G3G is an SAP partner with 24-year track record. We specialise in enterprise software advisory, license provisions and audits, implementation and support services, and we are an SAP partner centre of excellence as well. We've been running as a value-added reseller since 2007. G3G trades under the group brand Group Elephant. The group operates under a hybrid business model, employs roughly about 3,500 people over 40 countries, and is largely employee owned by boutique services firms and software companies. We also run a non-profit investment organisation called Elephants, Rhinos and People, or ERP. Here's a very quick snapshot of some of the clients we have as part of Group Elephant around the globe. You may or may not see your own logo there, or even logos that you're aware of, but we're really proud of our engagements with our client base, and we like to feel we make a difference on all of those engagements in one way or another. And just a little reflection on where we do operate and the projects that we have implemented. So you can see there our global footprint, many areas of interest that we work with, and hopefully you'll see there, for those of you that have offices outside of the UK as well as in the UK, you'll see how we can operate across the globe. Relevant for today is obviously our SAP S/4HANA experience. So as a group, we've conducted 20 S4 roadmap and strategy workshops. We've done 93 pre-flight assessments, and I'll explain what they are shortly. And then they have led to 4 greenfield implementations, 20 brownfield and 2 hybrid. So that's our current numbers. They are continuing to grow, as you can imagine, as the interest in S/4HANA increases. Being part of the Elephant Group means we can leverage the S/4HANA experiences across the whole group, and it's interesting if you look across the client base, the different stages clients are at in their journeys, and also the split between the different implementation approaches. Often when talking to organisations, it isn't immediately clear what approach is best to follow. We therefore have a modular approach with our shift to S4 SAP qualified solution to help our clients start with gaining insight with real facts to make decisions, moving through to have confidence to execute on the chosen path. The pre-flight, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is a free service to qualify the S4 move, providing analysis of enterprise structures, accounting data and functional data footprint to reduce the barriers to entry to the S4 program. The assess, verify and transform phases are 3 G3G SAP qualified partner package solutions. The assess phase picks up a proven assessment methodology which provides the recommended approach, and I'll cover that off a little bit more shortly. The verify phase provides an opportunity for a proof of value or proof of concept to be delivered, and this is really helpful to be able to see S/4HANA in your environment and really get to grips with it. And then the transform phase takes everything we've worked through in the previous phases to deliver a successful migration to S/4HANA. We can perform any or all of these phases as needed. The assess phase is where we introduce several tools and methods to define the recommended approach, of which SAP Signavio Process Insights is one. This graphic shows the level of analysis and work streams available within the assess phase. We tailor each engagement to meet the needs of the organisation we're currently working with. The value proposition needed for a good business case is identified within the business value delivery discovery work stream, which, as the name suggests, is designed to identify the value that S/4HANA will bring. A valuable tool for us in this phase is SAP Signavio Process Insights, which is utilised during the discovery and benchmarking steps themselves. The purpose of today's session is to begin to understand the power of SAP Signavio Process Insights, which can feed into an S/4HANA business case. As part of the S/4HANA business case, it's helpful to be able to articulate the value that S/4HANA can bring to your business processes. If we look at two key objectives from the business processes, we can focus on the ability to identify opportunities to optimize and innovate those processes. How can we optimize the way things are done? Is your process, is your organization following best practice or standard processes? How are your processes compared to industry peers or other industries? Are there efficiency gains to be made with your current processes? We need to look to innovate to make sure there's a difference going forward. Can we embrace technology to get the most of leading edge solutions? We need to align the future state of technology with business strategies, whether it's growth or ambitions to venture into different markets. And we need to seek out that competitive advantage for your organisation. I'll now hand over to Will so we can explain and demonstrate how Signavio Process Insights is crucial to qualifying and quantifying these business process objectives. Over to you, Will.
Good stuff. Thanks, Nick. Welcome, everybody. So we can jump right into the next slide. Thanks, Nick. Good. So we're just going to start off with a high-level look, excuse me, at the SAP Signavio Process Transformation Suite, as they like to call it, which much like SAP's ERP product is a suite of many different tools that all work together. And the focus area for today then is Process Insights, which sits at around about 7 o'clock on the circle that you see. And it is the let's say the thin end of the wedge that gets a lot of value very quickly. And then so you can move around, and there are various other components of the suite that allow you to then tackle, for example, process mining with process intelligence, and various mapping tools with Process Manager and the Journey Modeler, and then various other tools, process governance and process automation, all wrapped with a massive amount of IP within the Process Explorer. So just to give an overview of what the suite looks like as a whole, which can be utilized in its component forms, largely with the Process Collaboration Hub obviously being a component that would be used with most of the solutions. So I think we can skip down then through onto the next slide, which is talking about Process Insights specifically. Thanks, Nick. So Process Insights is an application that leverages KPIs that exist natively in your ERP system. That ERP system can be ECC or S/4HANA. These KPIs have been available in SAP's ERP solution for many, many years. And what this application brings then is the ability to, on the one hand, visualize the process flows using this data that it extracts. It will also then allow you to get details on these key performance indicators, for example, company and industry benchmarking of the performance indicators. And then over and above those insights, it provides recommendations, sort of short-term corrective recommendations, as well as innovation recommendations, largely driven around the fast pace way in which SAP introduces innovations and allowing those to be visualized and potentially focused on using the tool. Excuse me. And that theme of those four components, which are the process flow, the performance indicator, and the two forms of recommendations, is based on the fact that it's kind of like not a fixed set of KPIs, but it's information that is native to ERP, and it's just the way that it's being presented that is vastly improved to, let's say, the days gone by. Thanks, Nick. If we can move on to the next slide. Thanks. We can go to the next one. I think that it's important, before we get into the detail of what the application brings, is to just briefly touch on the evolution of key performance indicators in the ERP, on the SAP ERP context. And that is that in the days gone by, there was quite a tedious process of logging calls and getting continuous quality checks done, which took several weeks, and over time, the ability to extract this value that was actually sitting natively in the system did go through improvements, in the sense that within business process improvement functionality in Solution Manager, there would be W cubes that could be populated with these very same KPIs, and various analyses and so forth, and business process monitoring could be done in Solution Manager. But all these things took a lot of effort to really make use of these native KPIs that are embedded in the ERP system. So what we'll touch on next is to have a look at how you can get sight of these KPIs, and there's a couple of methods to do that. So Nick, if you want to just page down to the next slide, excuse me, which basically talks to how one can get a view of what SAP has to offer in terms of these native KPIs in the ERP system. And the reason I'm focusing on this is because the application, the Signavio process application, which drives the process improvements and the innovations, is 100% based on these key performance indicators that are native to the ERP system. So there is a KPI catalog. You'll see a couple of links at the bottom of the slide there. There's a number of ways in which one can access this information, either through me.sap.com or through the catalog itself. And it's amazing to see how the number of KPIs and the enhancement to these KPIs changes all the time. I can't keep up with the count. It's well over 1,500 now. And as I said, just to stress, these KPIs are sitting native in the system, and they are what this SAP Signavio Process Insights can quickly extract, and then this application utilizes this data to give all sorts of insights. The screenshot on the right is just the way in which in days gone by it was. Well, it's still possible today, but to look, as it were, at the back end of an ERP system, you can still, via the GUI, go and look at the TBI reports, which is the throughput and backlog indicator reports in the back end, and find the KPIs that the tool would extract from the back end perspective. So that's just, let's say, where we've come from over the years to where we are today, with this very, very user-friendly application that is really starting to leverage these KPIs. And of course, the KPIs are going through an evolution because they're growing all the time, but the application itself, literally over the months, has really gone in leaps and bounds in terms of what it brings to the table. Thanks, Nick. We can move on to the next slide. Before we get to the demo, as Nick said, this was just something that I thought was important to touch on before we get to the demo. And that is that quite recently, there's been what SAP terms a restricted release, which means that in the context of SAP Analytics Cloud. And what that means is that where Signavio Process Insights is an application which presents these KPIs, let's say in the application's design, there is now the possibility to essentially take those KPIs and put them into SAP Analytics Cloud to the way that you want to do it. It is early days. It's a restricted release, and thanks, Nick. If you can, that link will take you to some further information at the bottom. But if you page to the next slide, at the moment, the only process flow that is available is the supplier invoice issuing to FAP to accounts payable clearing process, and I think we're going to see a ramp up of processes that are available for presentation in SAP Analytics Cloud. So that's just a taster for what is coming, which is a highly flexible way to represent these KPIs in a fashion that you design. Okay, so that's just something that's on its way. Okay, we can move on from here. Thanks, Nick. Good. So just before we go on to the demo itself, I just wanted to focus in on a couple of things in terms of the way in which the application works. And that is that you'll notice that on the start page, or the home page, if you want to call it that, as with SAP's ERP product, there are many ways to get to where you want to be. And in Process Insights case, there is the start page. You can navigate to details from the start page. You can navigate via looking at end-to-end processes, and you can do the same via lines of business. And there's a value analysis function. So those are the 4 areas that I would like to touch on today. And then within those 4 areas of, let's call it an analysis or deep dive, there's a consistent way in which you address the particular area. And that I touched on earlier about, we look at process flows, performance indicators, correction recommendations, innovation recommendations. So those are the themes of the way in which the application then presents the data, with the fundamental core being those KPIs that are native to the ERP, and the application extracts it and presents it to you in this fashion. Okay, good. So I think on that note, I'm going to then share my screen. You give me a minute. Okay. Thanks, Nick. Good. So I will assume that everybody can see my screen. And before we go into Signavio Process Insights, I just want to touch on the catalog, which just touch on the catalog. So this is the catalog that I was referring to earlier, which is where one can see the available KPIs that SAP make available. Obviously, it depends a little bit on the version of SAP you're on, But from this position, one can then search by end-to-end process, by line of business, and look for KPIs. And as an example, based on a scenario that we're about to go and have a look at, if I look at, for example, purchase order items, open and overdue, this catalog then gives one a lot of detail about the definition of the KPI, down to really technical details about prerequisites and exactly how the KPI calculations are made. So it's important just to understand that the basis of the application is these KPIs, and one can look at the full available list of KPIs via the catalog. Okay, good. Right, so this is an SAP demo system, so just bear that in mind. But essentially, this is then the Signavio Process Insights application that has now extracted those KPIs we spoke of from your potentially from your productive ERP system, and it presents you. And this literally within a matter of hours will give you this picture, because it's an application designed to extract it and immediately produce this information. So, like I said, it gives you information across processes, immediate corrective actions to be taken, key performance indicators, and then long-term improvements based on innovation recommendations. So that's the start page. And like I said, you can get to where you want to be in many different ways. One can interrogate the processes via the end-to-end processes. For example, source to pay, procure to receipt, invoice to pay, and so forth. And it's got all the different areas of SAP's end-to-end processes as a mechanism to drill down. Likewise, in lines of business, one can also drill down to details, but in this case, it gives a performance indicator view of life. So the first scenario that I'd like to take a look at is in the line of business of procurement, and I'd like to look at improving the procurement productivity, FTE productivity. So when I drill down into an area, the system will automatically propose a number of process flows that fall into that specific area. And it will identify for a given bucket of time how many objects are in that, how many items, for example, how many purchase order items were created in that time slot, how many of them have gone through to completion, how long did it take, and are there any blockers? So for the purposes of today's scenario, what I'd like to touch on is the purchase order item creation process through to invoice receipt creation, of which in this case, there are over the particular time bucket for the extract from the source ERP system, there were 5,700 items, of which 39% are complete. So if I then click through onto that process, it gives me a visualization. I've left it fairly large because so that hopefully you can see it a little bit better. So I will have to pan across to get to the end of the process, but you'll see that it creates from left to right a visualization of the process, saying that so many purchase order items were created, so many goods receipt were created, so many supply invoices were created, and it gives you information about in this case, the value of those items, but one can switch to say, well, I'm more interested to see that process from a number of items perspective. So how many actual purchase order items were created over that period? So there's a number of ways that one can slice and dice across this process flow. One can see the date range of the extract. One can filter, excuse me, can filter on this on the process flow. And the area that I'd like to focus on next is what they call the blockers. So in the context of this specific process flow, there are these blockers, and the color coding is such that if the particular area is greater than 10%, it will be red. If it's between 5 and 10, it will be amber. And then you have an information block or an information message, and if it's between 0 and 5%. So in the case of this example, what I'd like to do is to say, well, I'm looking specifically at improving my procurement productivity for the purposes of saying, if I've got a challenge in procurement, the knock-on effect there is I'm going to have potentially, let's say, material shortages. That means that I'm going to have stock tied up in WIP. I'm going to have a product that I can't get out to sell. It's going to affect my revenue. It's going to affect my output. I'd like to help my people to improve this process and ultimately improve the bottom line. So what can I see by drilling down on this particular item here, where I see purchase order items are overdue? 45% of orders that are placed over that window are overdue. So I can then click down within this process flow, within that blocker, and it gives me the ability then to do further detail, what they call company benchmarking. So now I can look and compare plants or material types or purchasing orgs, and I can really hone in on where are the issues with this particular performance indicator. I can even go so far as to filter down in a very detailed manner, so your ability to focus in on company code, or when it was created, or what by delivery date. So there's a lot of power in being able to get to the bottom of why within that 45% that are past due, where does the issue lie? Okay, so that's the ability then to get to the bottom of it from the perspective of the process flow. And then, as I said, there are these 4 areas: process flows, performance indicators, correction recommendations, innovation recommendations, which are these areas at the top. So we're going to dive into the performance indicators, and it by default, it categorizes the performance indicators. I'd like to focus in this case into the backlog. And the backlog tells me that I've got 20,207 items that are open and overdue. So if I now drill down into my open and overdue purchase order items, I have a similar ability to filter, to narrow down where the issues may lie. I can also click on the details button and download those specific documents. Okay, excuse me. But most importantly, I can have a look at the correction recommendations. And like I said, the correction recommendations are those that I would say are short-term and can be dealt with immediately to create improvements in the process. And particularly in the context of moving to S4HANA, the Fiori overview tiles, which present very nice tiles and information to users in the various departments, can be quite scary when you've got a lot of, let's say, housekeeping to do, because with ERP and the GUI, that housekeeping doesn't present itself. However, in S4HANA, what you find is that it's glaringly obvious that you've got a lot of housekeeping to do as soon as you start looking at the Fiori overview pages, because it bubbles up and says you've got things from a long time ago that are sitting as open and overdue items, which ordinarily you wouldn't see with an ECC or a GUI environment, whereas in Fiori it will be there. So it's definitely something that needs sorting out in the move to S4. So this particular KPI is telling me that I've got these purchase order items open and overdue for at least a year. And in this example, if one then clicks through on that recommendation, excuse me, the application then in all cases will actually provide a detailed how-to guide of exactly what to do to address that problematic key performance indicator. Exactly what you need to do. So that's the immediate correction recommendation. Then we can move on to, within the context again of that particular process flow of improving productivity, is going to have a look at the correction recommendations. Again, the recommendations are categorized, and in this case, I'd like to focus in on a couple of innovations. The first one being the SAP Build Process Automation. And the SAP Build Process Automation, one of the workflow management items is something called visibility on procure to pay. And the visibility on procure to pay, when one clicks through on the recommendation, it's a case that there is a full set of instructions of how to implement and set up this particular visibility on procure to pay with all the guides and documents and so forth. And without going into too much detail here, I'd like to just show you an example of that. Let me just get to where I want to be. Am I? So the visibility on procure to pay is to say, okay, I've now attended to my correction recommendation, and I would now like to provide my procurement staff with a dashboard that will give them visibility on that procurement process. And visibility is a business technology platform, or BTP, process build application. And if I go and have a look at how I can provide to my procurement department the visibility on their procure to pay process, I can just give you an example of a visibility on procure to pay dashboard that would then be made available to the procurement team to then keep tabs in a very proactive and exception management manner. And this is then the procure to pay, the visibility on procure to pay dashboard that is made available, as I said, following the guides that was a click through on the innovation recommendation, on something that can be provisioned on BTP to the procurement department, where using the events that occur in your ERP system, I can keep track. What are my open items? What's the cycle time on my purchasing? What Maverick purchasing is going on? And essentially keep track on the procurement process. And there are others in visibility on spend and in other areas. So visibility as a method of giving insights to departments within the business is something that can be done in other areas as well. Okay. Good. So the other one that I wanted to touch on in terms of the intelligent technologies is the situation handling. And situation handling is something that is a new functionality within S/4HANA. And in this case, I'd like to just touch on this quantity deficit in supplier delivery, which is, again, an alert. So rather than the procurement department having to go and find out where the issues are, this is an alert that will give a message to the procurement people that they have not yet received a confirmation based on the order they placed, number one, and also potentially advise that some quantity they ordered is being short delivered in an exception management way, rather than the procurement people having to go and look for it or do it, go and find the information for themselves. Okay, so that's the situation handling scenario. So that's procure to pay. So I know we've got another 20 minutes to go. So I'm just going to then take a look at another line of business example, which would then be in the finance space, and say, in this case, we want to reduce cost. And I'm not going to go into performance indicators. I'm going to go, sorry, I'm not going to look at any of these process flows. I'm going to go immediately into performance indicators. Again, it's categorized, but I'd like to look at the automation rate, and particularly because here I can see an industry benchmark where only 9% of my financial documents are done automatically. And if I have a look at this particular key performance indicator, it's telling me that I'm sitting in the bottom 25%, and there's huge potential for me to improve the way that I create financial documents. And I can pick through on the innovation recommendations, and potentially again then look at the build process automation and find that there's a number of ways in which I can automate this process, either and like in the previous examples, I can click through and I get a guided procedure on how to potentially implement one of these bots. I'll just take a quick look at one of these as an example. But essentially, if you click through onto the innovation recommendation, there's a full detail on how to then implement a intelligent robotic process automation to then improve that, reduce costs by improving that, the amount of a manual creation of finance documents. So you might argue, well, so what does that really all mean? If I then move on to the last item here, which is value analysis, let me just look at it all together. Value analysis is something fairly new in Signavio Process Insights, where the system then generates a list of areas where it believes that there is a financial benefit that can be realized. So in this case, I'd like to have a look at the finance example that we've just done, which was creating financial documents. And the application itself has determined that if I move from that 9% of documents created to a target metric of 91%, there is a potential of 422,000 euros saving. And that's a calculation that SAP does. So you might argue, well, where does that, is that feasible? Does it make sense in my case? Well, one can drill down into this value analysis, and it will explain the basis on which that value was created. In this case, it's assuming that 5,000 documents were posted in a week, 48 weeks, and it then calculates to say, well, it takes 5 minutes as an assumption to create a document, and the cost per person in euros is 25, and so it does a calculation. It is possible, if one has the authorizations, to in fact edit these financial calculations to say, well, I think it takes quicker to create the document or longer, and my cost is different. So it is possible to modify these to get numbers that you are happy with. And it's also possible then, as time goes by, to monitor the actual value that you're getting from making the changes. And as you see automation increasing, you can see the cost of creating these documents moving down across time. So that's the value analysis example that I wanted to touch on. Excuse me. Just to go back to one item that I wanted to talk about, that is specific to the time topic that we spoke of, now in the way in which the value can be calculated over time. It's similar when it comes to the process flows. As we saw, the process flow is defined as what happened in a bucket of time. So the way in which the engagement with Signavio Process Insights, when it comes to the move to S4 and being able to use the tool to focus on innovations and corrective actions, let's say corrective actions now in order to prepare for a move to S4, as well as using the innovations to then build a roadmap of what one wants to do post the move to S4. That's not the end of the story, because Signavio Process Insights ultimately is a tool that can be used in an operational fashion, and as and when the KPIs are extracted over time, it is a case to then look back and compare and get a trend to say, well, I had 20,000 open purchase order items. I put in an intervention to bring them down. What's happening? Is it improving? Is it not improving? And perhaps once one area has improved, I can move into another area. And the tool can be used in operational fashion over time as well. So it's not something that needs to only be done as let's say as part of an assessment in the way that I've just explained, but it is a tool that is an operational tool that can be used over time. Good. Thanks. I think that's pretty much covered what I wanted to talk about. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Will. Brilliant. So there was a question that was pinged up. It didn't actually appear in the chat. It was pinged to me directly. Oh, sorry, I'm not showing my video. The question was how easy is it to implement the Signavio Process Insights with your system? You know, is that I'm assuming we're looking to see if that's a difficult activity, or is it pretty much plug and play?
Okay. If your SAP source system is fairly up to date, and when I say fairly up to date, I guess beyond, there are some prerequisites, excuse me, for example, NetWeaver 740 and onwards. It's a fairly easy connection, and within a matter of hours, if not perhaps a day or two, it's a matter of creating the connection, triggering the extract, and immediately those KPIs are available. We have had one challenge where the system was older and we had to do a kind of workaround, which took a bit longer. But I would say that if your source system is fairly up to date, because the KPIs are native and the app knows exactly what it's looking for, provided it gets that extract, once that connection is made, it's a matter of hours, and that those statistics are available.
Thank you. Hopefully that's answered the question. Thank you, Will. Just going to go back to the slide deck again, just to close out the session. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Thanks. So yeah, just thought it was important just to recap what we were aiming to try and cover off. Obviously it's a massive subject matter, and Will is just scratching the surface of the capability of these tools and the overall SAP Signavio process suite as well. But if we reflect back about those challenges of optimize and innovate, you see there Will's been able to demonstrate through those tools that it's highlighting process challenges, but not just that, it's also then coming up with the recommendations in regards to where you can focus your efforts to be able to resolve those, and coming to the innovation, looking to see where the next and the latest and greatest innovation from SAP's processes will actually address these, and where possible apply automation and improve efficiencies. So, you know, we really believe that the SAP Signavio Process Insights tool is critical to being able to articulate exactly you know, the benefits that these process improvements will bring. Will did also just cover off at the end there. I think the other thing that's really important is, you know, this isn't just a one-stop shop. We can sit there, or one-trick pony. We can work with Signavio to look for ongoing analysis, ongoing process improvements. So once you are live with your S/4HANA implementation, it's not a case of that your Signavio suite doesn't have any purpose. It's there for the long game. So it's there as part of the run techniques to be able to then assess and innovate and improve going forward. So it's a never-ending cycle and a tool and a benefit that you can gain from that. Okay, just very quickly, just wanted to reflect back on the poll that you guys kindly did for us at the beginning. So we went through, obviously we asked the question, you know, where are you guys on your journey to S4? I've aligned that to how we would then look to help you move forward, or, you know, indeed these stages that we have through our shift to S4 process. So for anyone not started or still assessing the options, there's plenty to go at, plenty of information. The Signavio tools really do give some insight as to your current processes, and, you know, definitely the pre-flight assessment, those kind of insights there are really valuable as well. Anyone already on S4, so the 20% of the respondents within that, as I've mentioned before, you know, the run practicalities of Signavio are really beneficial, and what we really don't want to do is people put all the effort into getting to S4 and then stand still and not embrace the technology as it's coming forward. The second poll questions that we took, so what do you perceive as the biggest blockers? And again, you know, so I've captured here the percentages of the answers. So budget and complexity are the highest perceived blockers. Our suggested approach that we would discuss as we were going through any kind of analysis phase, assessment phase with yourselves, would be to, as far as budget's concerned, it's always a tough one. We would definitely focus on the value and not just the cost. Everyone keeps focusing on the cost. There is also a cost of not moving, you know, standing still. That's not a great way to be. You know, you're not going to lose your competitive advantage. Also with budget, it's possible to consider agile stages to get to the goal rather than doing a one big hit projects, and that might help spread the budget out as well. From a complexity point of view, really focusing on the assessments that can be done, including a proof of concept or a proof of value, because I think there's a perceived complexity that maybe isn't actually as real as everyone worries about. So I think it's really important to get under the bonnet of those complexities to be able to really kind of see where the problem and challenges are, and then work with your internal teams, with us as a partner, with other partners and other SIs, etc., to be able to really resolve those and move forward. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our session. I can't believe we've run to time, Will, so thank you and well done for that. We will ask that anyone that would like any more information or reach out and contact us and follow up questions or anything, feel free to scan the QR code that's on the screen. I've also taken the liberty of putting Will and mine email addresses on there as well. So if you did want to reach out in person, please feel free to do that. You know, we'd love to see you. And then lastly, for anyone that is coming to the UKI Sub Connect at the end of the month, come and see us. We're at booth G13. I'll be there. My colleague Nikki Cox will be there as well. So again, we'd love to see you and love to talk.